This would have been 8th and 9th grade. I was taking, well, I had to take, I was raised a Lutheran, and we had confirmation class. It was Thursday nights during the school year, 8th grade and 9th grade. And in church, we had to take notes. The pastors gave us a sheet, and we had to say, okay, what was the date, what was the biblical text, what was the title of the sermon, and then the key points of the sermon. So we had to listen to it and write that down and hand it in as proof that we were paying attention and we'd been in church. And thinking back, that's a lot like what a journalist does when they cover an event, a talk or something like that. And so I was always interested in news. My dad worked for a printing company that printed the Sunday magazine, things like Parade. But he always brought home papers. He worked nights, and we got, I lived on Long Island, and we got the afternoon paper Newsday, and he would bring home New York City papers that I could see in the morning before I went to school. So I was always interested in the news, watched it a lot. And so when I got to high school, and there's a high school paper, and I joined that and did various tasks for it throughout the 4 years there, and enjoyed it an awful lot. I just really liked that kind of writing and finding out information. And so when I applied to schools, although I wasn't very methodical, my mom had died when I was in high school, the guidance counselor gave me some suggestions on schools, and I just picked one. I applied to a few, not really thinking about journalism majors or anything, which I probably should have, but anyway, and I ended up going to the one that gave me the most money, because we didn't have a lot of money. It was Gettysburg in Pennsylvania, a liberal arts school. Didn't have a journalism course anywhere, but it had a college paper. I joined that freshman year and enjoyed it a lot. I became editor early because there wasn't anyone else. So part of my sophomore and junior years, I was the editor of the paper and just really loved it. Journalism was my first love. Applied to some newspapers, and 7 months after graduating, I got a call from a small paper not far from Gettysburg in a town called Hanover to come for an interview for a reporter's job. And it was a choice between that, and I had taken an exam to work for the federal government. I could have worked for the Social Security Administration, but journalism was my love, so I went there, got hired for $130 a week. This was back in the 70s. I got hired at the same time as another guy. I had asked for more money, but he had already given this other guy less, and he said, well, I have to pay you the same amount because it would only be fair, which I didn't agree with, but I wanted a job. And so that was the beginning. And I worked there for a while and went down into this was in southern Pennsylvania, worked in their Maryland bureau, went out to Ohio, worked out there for a little bit, and then came to Syracuse. So I moved like 4 times in 5 years, moving around, getting different experience at different levels, being sports editor, reporter, city editor, taking photographs along the way, developing film and printing out, so all kinds of stuff like that. So I came up here, and this was a big enough paper that they really cared about the quality of journalism, and that's really what I wanted, not just the bottom line, which some of the smaller papers that were owned by chains. So they really wanted to put out a good paper. And so I was hired, and I worked here from 81 to 2007, so 26, 27 years here. Mainly at the morning paper, the Post-Standard, a few years at the afternoon paper, but did a lot of different jobs.
The majority of your career was at the Post?
Yeah, the Post-Standard.
Okay.
Yeah, all but 4 years up here. I was sports editor, I was assistant neighbors editor, I was a copy editor on the state desk, worked on it, and also was I worked on the editorial department for about almost 10 years, doing the letters to the editor and the columnists, which I loved, interacting with the public that way. And ended up merging the papers. They closed the afternoon paper. And they didn't lay anybody off, but some people ended up leaving. They put me on the night desk, which I did not like, having young kids, but it was a job, and I loved the editing part of it. And I went back to school actually to become an elementary school teacher, but couldn't get a job, but ended up teaching at the college level. They had a buyout in 2007, which was really attractive, so I took that, and I've been teaching at the college level ever since. So I'm teaching journalism. So I'm teaching journalism without having ever taken a journalism course, but it's knowledge over the years that I've gained working with editors and reporters and all that I'm able to convey, and the experience of things that I can tell students about.
Right.
And as far as what quote the real world, it's not you know what how to put the theory into practice and how I've seen it work or not work. Type
Right.
of things. So.
Well, you said as a kid that you would often read newspapers from your dad, but you know nowadays kids are getting news from social
Yeah,
media
not,
and the internet,
yeah.
right? I mean, so that difference, what impact do you think that has on kids of this generation?
You know, when you read a newspaper or even a magazine now, anything print,
Mm-hmm.
you may buy it because you're interested in a story or certain parts of it, but you may come across other stories and things that you didn't think about, but you may say, hey, I'll read about that. And what's happening now is with the electronic versions, more and more of it gets tailored to your interests.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're informed on more narrow areas than you would normally if you were reading actually a newspaper type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's the information is being niche marketed to people, especially the younger generation.
Yeah.
And so I don't think there's this broad interest or knowledge about the world at large. I mean, U.S. news is always American-centric anyway, but I think it's even more so nowadays as far as that goes. So yeah, that's a big concern that people know a lot about a few things, but not enough about a lot of things and what's going on in the country, or the world. The news literacy aspect, that knowing what is true and what isn't, and that takes a lot of work now. That there's so much information out there. How do we figure out who's telling the truth? Before, when there's limited information, the journalists were the gatekeepers, and we basically relied on them. But now it's our job to find out who's doing it.
So you don't really think the future of journalism is that bright?
I'm worried.
Yeah.
I am, because the economic models are out the window with Craigslist and all the other shattering the reliable stream of revenue, which is sort of by accident, but it's sustained the industry for a few centuries,
Mm-hmm.
and that's gone. And with the competition for attention for all these platforms, all these areas, and you draw readers by what? It's a lot of it, unfortunately, has become clickbait. I still believe that I think people want long-form journalism, but how to present it in a way that they will pay for it.
Yeah.
I mean, ProPublica and other groups are funding it privately, but is that the way to sustain journalism in the long run? I don't think we figured that out yet. And I'm worried that when we don't have the watchdogs out there keeping an eye on the institutions, that bad things will happen, and we won't know about it till it's too late. So it's a concern. Yeah.
So how do you feel about all these ads now just being placed into the
Yeah,
publications?
I know, it's annoying. It really is. And I
Mhm.
click away from as possible. I know Circus.com is now putting them a lot of others are putting them in the middle of the stories, and they'll start automatically and start talking unless you X out of them. It's a pain. It's a pain.
Yeah.
But I also realize they're trying to make money in the process. So I'm as impatient as anyone else. But I realize what they're trying to do. I'm just disappointed as far as what the quality of it is in some places, that it is really just to attract clicks, and where they, instead of having a story, they'll have slides, so you have to click through 10 or 12 of them to get the whole story,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just reading a story. So I know what they're doing, they're building up the clicks, so they go to advertisers and saying, use that as data to get the advertisers. So it's a really tough predicament right now, I think.
Right. Well, I mean, so with the expansion of blogs and social media, more people are connected about topics. So, would you say this is good for democracy, or is it better that journalists decide which stories should be sent out to the public?
Boy, that's a really good question. I think if we're sharing good information through the blogs and social media, then it's great. But the issue again is, how do you make sure? I mean, we are, that's the goal of the course, to make everyone responsible, because we all publish. If you put a posting up on Facebook, or you share something, or you tweet something, you're a publisher.
Right, right.
And we have to realize that it's our responsibility to spread correct information, not rumors, not things we know are untrue, and or things that we don't care whether they're true or not, because that not only harms us as reliable people, it harms the society at large. And so, again, it's how it's used. And I think the journalists have realized that they've got to be out there with those tools as well to get that information out. So you can follow New York Times or other reporters on Twitter, and get information from them that you can't always get in their stories, but relying on them that they won't be tweeting something that's not true, as opposed to something else. Anyone else can have a Twitter or a web page or a blog and put stuff out.
Right.
And if some people start spreading what they're saying because, well, it might be true, it sounds like it could be, and then it gets spread wide, and a lot of damage can be done to people's reputations, to businesses, to to a lot of things.
What about citizen journalists? I mean, with the internet, HD cameras, freedom of speech, do you think everyone is a journalist?
No, they can share information, but until they do the things that we talk about in news literacy, that they verify the information, and they can show where they got it, how they know what they're presenting to the rest of us, that they don't have an agenda that they're promoting because of whatever it is, whatever the topic is, and they have their name on it. So if it's not right, we can say, okay, I'm not going to go back to him or her anymore because they're putting out bad information. So those three things, that's what separates news and journalists from everyone else who's sharing information.
Right. So what's your best piece of advice for current journalism students then?
Well, I mean, you got to have the fire in your belly.
Yeah.
You got to be, dedicated and be able to, be multi-talented, multi-trained. You can't just write now. You have to be able to use these other platforms, to use your phone as a camera, and to be able to persevere in going after the information. Be dedicated to doing serious journalism. Find a place where you can do that. I mean, I know you gotta feed your family, or put food on the table and clothes on your back, and sometimes you have to compromise to do that. But look for places that are honest and want to do good work for the good, not just the bottom line, but are trying to do good journalism for the public, to help this democracy survive, to give people the information they need to make these decisions, and hopefully you find a place like that that is worthy of your time and energy, and be ready to work really hard. I mean, it's really, with the internet and everything, it's around the clock job. You don't just go home and you're done until you get back to the office the next day. If you're on a beat, you're responsible for whatever happens. And if something happens at 8 p.m., you better be on it and be ready to cover it. It's like a doctor being on call. And so it's a hard job, but it's such an important one. So, and you gotta love it. Especially starting out, I'm sure the pay is not as good. It never was. You don't go into it to be rich. Do it. To me, you do it to do good work and to help society. So.
Do you think that's steering a lot of students away from trying to become a journalist?
I don't think so. I think there are jobs out there, and Newhouse is producing people that are equipped to do it. It may not go in exactly the place that they think they're going to go, but you can still be working for, if it's not a journalism company, it could be another kind of company that still is dealing, or it could be an NGO, it could be an advocacy group, but if you're upholding the principles of being truthful and all that, then it still could be worthwhile. So I would still encourage people to go into it. I think it takes a strong stomach, and you have to be, because it's not a sure thing that you're going to have something right away when you go out. But do the internships that you can to see maybe what niche that you might want to pursue.
Kind of print sales. Do you think that online content will be able to compensate for that loss?
Well, it hasn't yet. I mean, there are some groups that are doing better, but again, are people going to want to pay for something that they can get for free? I mean, eventually, I guess you could say that it won't be free because there won't be anyone producing it. You can't Google something and get a New York Times story if there's no one working, no one getting paid to do that. So, I envision someday there won't be print newspapers. As the generations move on, that those who are not reading print will read it. They'll read it on a tablet, they'll read it on their phone, or maybe on the TV, or wherever, however they're going to get it. But I see, print actually going away eventually.